Hey everyone, this is my first video that I'm going to do because I had so many books that I read in the month of July. I wanted to talk to them a little bit more in depth, so here we are. Let's go ahead and jump right into it because I read 17 books in the month of July and I want to yap about them a little bit. So we're going to go through these and tell you about what I thought about them and I recommended them. I'm going to continue the series, and I read all genres. I read fantasy, I read lit fiction, I read romance, and I read horror. So it's pretty diverse and some classics in here as well. So I'm just going to get right into it because I don't know how long this video is going to actually be once I do all the editing for it, but I'm going to reference the books that I don't have physical copies of. So, and they're not in order. I'm just randomly picking them off of where I have them here. So the first one I have is Last Night in Brooklyn by Xochitl Gonzalez. This was marketed as a Great Gatsby retelling, but in Brooklyn, New York, it didn't feel as Great Gatsby. There was parts of it, but basically there's this girl who lives outside of the city in Brooklyn and she wants to come to the city. She gets invited kind of like on a party because they're going to tear down some buildings in Brooklyn due to gentrification, and they want to build a new building. And then she meets some cast of characters there and gets to hang out with them for a couple of days. She does have some family members. One of the main characters is also her cousin. She knows people from her past. So pretty quickly into the book, she kind of gets brought in to the story where one of the characters is like having an affair. This book though, the character who's supposed to be like, you know, our character in The Great Gatsby is actually a woman, and she is pretty well known. She's like a designer. So she seems to think that the guy that she gets introduced to by our main FMC is going to leave his wife for her. So that kind of is the same concept of The Great Gatsby. There's other parts of it as well. There is a party in the middle of it, but it's not really the focal point of it. You know, in The Great Gatsby, there's this huge party that they throw. That's not really like the main concept of it, but I would say that there is very relevant themes to it, and I really enjoyed this short novel by her. So yeah, I cannot wait to read more, but I love this cover because it's yellow and pink. So love that. The next one I read was Fury Bound by Sable Sorensen. I had picked up this copy because it's a special edition copy and it's just really pretty. I listened to it in audio first, and then I went back and purchased a physical copy. I didn't really love our second book more than I did the first book. I thought the first book was really fun. Nothing too innovative, but obviously, you know, they can speak mentally to their wolves, kind of like, you know, all the dragon books that we know. And it's kind of compared to like Fourth Wing, where they can talk to the dragons via their mind. In the first book, she was very adamant, and they were very adamant to connect to each other, the main girl and the wolf. But in this story, I feel like it took some weird turn where like the MMC, there's two MMCs, and at the end of book one, if you read it, like, you know, there's kind of a twist, and I kind of already saw that coming, and I was kind of happy because I did not like the guy that we were trying to root for. But it was okay. I don't know that I loved it as much as I was hoping to love it, so I'll probably continue the series. Next one I read was Infinite Love Story by Chanel Clayton. This was given to me as an ARC, and I really enjoyed this. This was a book that took place 2 different timelines, and she usually writes historical fiction. This is like a contemporary romance historical fiction, I guess, because it's more contemporary than what her other works. If you read her other books, you know it's true historical fiction, but this one is more like a present timeline, and I mean present as in the 60s, because the 60s is when the space program started. So she talks about how her and her husband meet. Her husband is lost in space, and like we don't really know where he went. So she tries to uncover, you know, what happened, who they told, you know, what's going on, like what did NASA, like who do they investigate, like all the investigation that's going on between, like how did he actually disappear, like know that your husband's just like missing in space, like it's so sad. But a lot of the themes also were how she is a wife of like the military and how difficult that is to like keep secrets, and they're just always working, and how that tears marriages and families apart, and how they have to be super strong and just kind of put their own stuff aside as women to like help the men fulfill their dreams. And this is an astronaut dream, so it's not just like a small dream, it's a huge dream. I liked how they met. I really liked the writing, I liked the pacing of it, I liked the romance, I liked how she brought in a lot of, you know, space aspects of it. There was some beautiful quotes in this story. So yeah. And if you love space, like, you'll really enjoy this book. Then I read a classic. So this was a kind of hard to find. I found it through Libby, but I was looking for a Spanish or like a Hispanic or Latin book. But I went through like the books that Libby was recommending to me, and I was like, you know what, let me go through this list. Because you know what, check out Libby. Sometimes they do be giving you like really good recommendations that you never would have thought of. So this was one of the books I recommended. It had a different cover, and I didn't realize that it was a classic, and I didn't realize that it was a translated novel. But this was really good. Actually, on the back of this, it says House of Mango Street and Angela's Ashes. But this is a Colombian woman who has just the most saddest story ever. So we don't really know her origin, right? So when we get started in the story, and the book is called, by the way, the book is called The Book of Emma Reyes by Emma Reyes, and it's a Penguin classic. I bought this on Amazon after I read the book because I want to have classics that are from Latine authors. So I'll be doing, you know, more of that like later on, but this was my very first one of like the Penguin classics by a Latine author that I own. So this is basically a story about a woman. We start off in her childhood. We don't know much about where she's coming from, but she and her siblings, actually she has a sister. That's all she has. It's just her and her sister, and there's a lady that takes care of her. And it's pretty clear that it's not the mom. It's just a lady that takes care of her. They live in Colombia, and it's very poor, you know, and they go through like their lives. It's very bleak, and, you know, she tries to figure out, do the best she can to keep this lady happy, basically. And, you know, they are always in trouble, and they can't do much, and they're inside, and they eat porridge, and, you know, they eat just like whatever they're eating that's not the best. And one day this man comes and basically gives her money. So it kind of felt like they were being sold off, you know, like child trafficking, but it actually was not that. The woman actually left the city to go to like a different city, so supposedly to make a better life for themselves. And then they go through, you know, this different town, and she's just trying to make it better. But you could tell that like she hates these girls. Like, she is not a fan of these girls. Girls can feel it, right? They can feel that they're not loved. They don't really know much about their parents, or they don't talk about their parents. So like, I don't really know where their parents are. And I don't even know if she knows where they are. At one point, the lady ends up being pregnant. And then she has a son. And then while on the trip, before they leave to a different town, she loses the baby, or like because she doesn't take care of it, like it passes away. And it's so they're like screaming because they like saw this baby grow up, but like she does not tend to this baby, unfortunately, and it ends up passing away just from the conditions. So eventually they go to this other town, and they end up in a nun house, for, you know, house for nuns. Somewhere along the line, this lady disappears and basically gets abandoned. These girls get abandoned at a monastery, maybe like a, you know, like a church, and they take them in. And now they're like, well, who left you here? And they're just like, this, you know, this lady. And they keep trying to ask them, like, well, where's your parents? Who's your mom? Like, who do you belong to? And they really just don't know. You know, they do the best they can. They raise these girls, and now she wants to be a nun because that's what she's known now for years. And they will not let her be a nun, basically because they don't know where her origin is coming from. And because it's Catholic, and it's like, you know, I don't even know what year this takes place in. But they don't allow her to become a nun because they don't know her story. So she's just got the worst of luck. Really enjoyed hearing about her story. So love that. I did read Cleat Cute by Meryl Wilsner. This was a book that I wanted to pick up because A, it was sapphic, and B, the World Cup was happening. So I wanted something kind of along the lines of that. And I decided to pick this one up. This one unfortunately didn't hit for me because it was, you can tell their attachment styles a lot. And you can tell, like, if you know anything about attachment styles, you know, anxious and avoidant are like, you know, they're always going to attract each other. So you could really tell that our two characters were just very, very, very like attachment style focused. So it was like an attachment style book. Grace was our girl. She was an older girl that had been in the league, in the world, you know, not World Cup, but like in her soccer league for women. And she was very praised. She was popular, famous. You know, everyone online knew her. Everyone kind of knew her. Phoebe was our other younger FMC who comes in and kind of is like the new rising star. So there's a jealousy going on, but then they start, you know, Phoebe's very open. She's the anxious one. She tries to get to know her and then quickly find out that they, you know, like each other. She likes girls. She likes girls. So you can tell that lust was happening. But you can definitely tell, like, Grace was so mean to Phoebe. Like, she was so mean to her. There was really good aspects of like female friendships and like, you know, what happens in sports leagues and, you know, leadership, not leadership, but I guess like championship leagues and what happens with that. So that was really fun. Like the rest of the cast was really fun, but like their relationship drove me nuts. That's what I thought about that book. I read The Odyssey by Homer. This is Emily Wilson's translation. It has been everywhere, you know, ever since the movie came out. I did also go watch the movie immediately after. So, yeah, what can I say about this book? So this book is 3,000 years old. I had never read it. I'm not, you know, an English major by any means, but I wanted to try my luck because why not? So anyway, I tabbed it. I just read it with my eyeballs. It took me about a week, like 7 days to finish it. It's really easy to read, to be honest. It's really easy to follow. There is a lot of notes in the back. There is pronunciations. Yeah, I didn't read the introduction. I usually skip introductions sometimes. I want to just get to the story. And I feel like the movie was fantastic. Very few things were changed, obviously, but for the most part, it kept to the like same style and flow. All I could say is that I felt for Odysseus throughout his journey. I could see the different points that are being made about, you know, women and Circe. I love to see all the characters. I had been studying Greek mythology and, you know, Roman history pretty much all year. Unbeknownst to anyone here on YouTube, but I have on my other socials shared that. So I was not unfamiliar with a lot of the characters and a lot of the stories and like the mythology. There's still so much to read about mythology, so that's something that I do want to do like in the future. But for the most part, I did understand it, and I really enjoyed this book. Like I teared up a couple times, and again, I ended up doing like a little journal spread in the front here. Which I thought was fun. I grabbed it. This idea does not come from me. It came from Mel Loves Reading, I believe. It's her, the one who came up with that idea. And so anyway, I really enjoyed that. And the movie that I really enjoyed was Burning Daylight by Emily McIntyre. So much so that I've already picked up book 2. I wasn't done with this book yet, but I went into my Barnes and picked up book 2 because I really enjoyed this book. Now, this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet in a more modern setting, but it is to, you know, Roman, what's his last name? Montgomery, and Juliet Calloway. And they are opposing families because the dads kind of did some shit, you know, back in their day. And Juliet's dad tried to, well, this is what they think anyway. They think that Juliet's dad tried to kill Roman's mother and sister, I believe. He just seems to think that Juliet's family did that. So there was some characters in here like Tyler, you know, there's another character in here, Mercutio, and I'm really curious how this book was going to end. Clearly ever after, so it's not going to end exactly the same as Romeo and Juliet, but I really liked this story. This at first, now let me tell you this, because I did see some reviews saying this about this book. At first, it does seem insta-lust. Right, so they meet. They don't know who the other person is, and you know they have lust, and you know they don't really hook up. But he's an artist where he draws, and she's a writer where she likes writing. Okay, so that's their like thing. And they kind of just see each other in a club because he owns a club or his family owns a club. After that first initial, like it wasn't even a full hookup scene. I think it was like a mild, you know, chili pepper scene, like a family get together, and they figure out who they really are. You know, they get mad at each other and like, oh my God, you lied. Oh my God, we can't do this. Like our families hate each other. Start meeting in this like edge of the cliff type situation, and where their friendship starts. And then they become friends to lovers, and it is a slow burn. So I believe after that initial hookup, they really don't talk about, you know, lusting after each other. They talk about writing and like drawing and like their families, and they just get to know each other at settings so their families like don't tell them they can't hang out. I think they didn't even hook up till like chapter 30 or something again. So really enjoyed that book. And there is a second book or second novel now, Forsaking Midnight, I believe is book 2. Then I read Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This was one of the books. I did a challenge where I was going to read 7 books in 7 days. A little too hard. I think I only read like 2.5 so far. But this was one of the books that I wanted to read because I picked most popular books. And this was one that has been everywhere on my feeds. So I had to pick this up. I knew this was sapphic. The writing is absolutely stunning. This was 5 stars immediately just because of how beautiful the writing is. But basically it's about a girl who's a coming of age, and she's just trying to figure out her sexuality, and her parents have already approved of this boy named Martin, and they want her to go, start a relationship with him and, do life with him. It's a small town, so, it is. And it also takes place in the 90s, I believe. Yeah, 90s. 1990s, Crossmore, Ireland. So that's our setting. It has this friend group, and in the friend group, there's one girl that keeps catching her eye, which is Susanna, and eventually they start, forming feelings. And she keeps pushing those away, and she keeps like telling herself like, no, there's something wrong with you. Like, go with Martin. Eventually they give in. Susanna and her give into their feelings. And it was so refreshing to see that both of the characters were like open to this new exploration of love. And they weren't really like fighting each other. Like, it wasn't like an anxious attachment. It was true, like, I wouldn't say secure, but it was very sweet and it was very endearing. Sometimes they wrote letters to each other, which, they were a lot more forthcoming in their feelings because they wrote letters to each other. So that was really cool to see. But yeah, really an interesting story. I loved everything about this book. It was 5 stars. So absolutely loved this book. Books this month was Heart's Landing by Melanie Harlow. So this book was fun. This was kind of like a mystery second chance romance book, but this is about our female main character, Mila. Yeah. Mila. So many cute things about this book. Like, I highlighted and wrote a bunch of notes in this book. It's also like a special edition that I went when I met signing for her here in town. But this is supposed to be a second chance or second generation book. I've only read this one by her, so I don't know who the other characters are, but I really enjoyed this book. This was like a 4.5 4-star read about a girl who is basically coming back into her small town after she disappears for like 10 years because a bakery that she used to work in burned down. And all fingers point to her, that she was the one responsible for this thing. And so she was shamed and kind of shamed out of her town. And then now she's coming back because her very, 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 very narcissistic mom like needs her help because she's having like hip surgery. So she comes back into town, runs into Everett. And Everett is just like, he's now the mayor of the city. And he has this dog named, oh gosh, what was the dog's name? I can't remember, but he has like this dog. And it was just like he was so adorable. Like, he was just like a golden retriever guy. And honestly, she was very, I guess you could say that she was very like reserved half of the book, but she's open to being friends again. So it's kind of like second chance love, and she's not being mean or anything, but she's definitely holding back because she thinks that everyone hates her in this town. There's like a mystery involved, and it definitely ends on a cliffhanger. So I know there's going to be another book in this series. So I really enjoyed this book for being the first book in the series that I read by her. My favorite romance, I think, of the month, maybe, was In Stormy Weather by Chelsea Good. Was about Quincy and Sebastian, and he has had a crush on her since they were like kids or teens, something like that. But this is a story about Quincy, who she is a STEM girly. So she kind of has a, following online, and she has a podcast and like a live show that she does. He is actually also in the same, academic type of field, but he's actually on like the news. Like, he actually has like a regular news segment that he reports on the news, and they both report on like hurricanes and tornadoes and that type of crazy weather because it takes place in Florida. So this was like, he was so smitten with her the entire time, but like, there was no third act breakup. This is a book with no third act breakup. I loved the writing in this, the way that he just like saved ketchup packets for her throughout the book because he knows that she likes ketchup packets. Some scenes where it was like action and Twister related, weather related. First book by Chelsea Curto, and this was literally like a 6-star read for me. Like, I love this book so much. I also read Close Relationships with Strangers by Krista Diamond. This was a book that was marketed, I kind of liked it for the cover. I picked it up as an ARC from NetGalley, but this was marketed as like a Las Vegas and Los Angeles transport that's trying to figure out his life. So he does try to figure out his life. He wants to be a paparazzi, which is not like the most common of jobs out there that I guess that you would think of. But he has an obsession, like a parasocial, obsessive relationship with this Jack character. He's a movie star that lives in Los Angeles. And he ends up having a girlfriend in Las Vegas, and she does really good for like a basically like a small downtown like show that she's like super popular in, and like everyone loves her. And then, they start a relationship, and then quickly after he's like, I want to move to LA. And this is like a few months maybe into their relationship. And he's like, yeah, I just want to move to LA to be a paparazzi. And he doesn't convince her, but she decides to go with him. And, the consequences of all this was just nuts. He just has no regard for anything other than himself. He's very selfish. He does not care that she has to drive back and forth to Vegas because she can't find work in LA. So now she has to like commute, the 4-hour drive from Las Vegas to Los Angeles to continue working. All he cares about is like figuring out how to be like a better paparazzi. It was interesting. A lot of the descriptions though, because I am in Las Vegas, it was very accurate to living in Las Vegas. So I really did appreciate that she is from here and just wrote Las Vegas, other than like, the casinos. Like she didn't talk about that really, but a lot of the points were really interesting. So I really did enjoy that book. Strangers by Belle Burden. Now this one is a memoir, and it is probably like the memoir of the year, of the summer. I'm not sure, but it was everywhere. I had purchased the audiobook and I had wanted to listen to it. So I listened to it, and I don't think that book was written for me. Coming from someone who has been in her situation before, I was angry the entire time. And I don't know that it's angry because of what happened to her. I think it was more angry with me how she reacted, just because I didn't even know her whole backstory of how like she's basically a billionaire until after I read the book. So my feelings are even like worse now that I realize that that's the information. Like she's rich, but yeah, she's married, marries this guy, he gives her all the red flags in the world, and she basically ignores it because she just didn't care that one day she'll be fine no matter what because she's so wealthy, like deep levels of wealth. Okay, you can look her up, like deep levels of wealth. So like it wouldn't make a difference to her if like he left her or not, but he leaves her basically to go for a younger woman. And she just, she begs him to come back and begs him and cries and doesn't understand, and just all these crazy things. She signed a prenup against her lawyer's wishes to like give him half or something if anything ever happened. He gives her so many, instances where you could tell he wasn't happy. And like her comment of, well, he didn't tell me he was unhappy. I've never in the history of ever heard a guy go, hey, I'm unhappy. They usually show you. So I know she's a shy person maybe, or just like her demeanor is that way, but it just didn't sit right with me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't find it really inspirational. I didn't see much retrospect. I didn't see much reflection from her very much, other than she was able to write this, memoir or book, and like it took off at some point, but like I just didn't find it that inspiring, to be honest. I feel like there's probably better books, but I know it's super popular. It just was not for me. So that's my take on it. I also read The Wall by Marlene Haushofer. So this book was marketed like a similar book to I Who Have Never Known Men, which I love. I love that book, own that book, love that book. It was very similar, I would say. It's very dense, and the whole book is just one book. There's no breaks in the paragraph. There's no paragraph. There's no chapters. It just goes on and on and on and on for like 155 pages, 200 pages, something like that. It's about a woman who is out camping, I believe, and then she has her family. She has a family, and then all of a sudden she is separated from them. This invisible wall, and that's it. And then she has to grapple with her new reality that her companions are only this dog, this cow, and a cat. There's no other human relationships. There's no human to come find her. Don't really know why, other than that's just how it is. She's in this cabin, and she just has to take care of these animals, and that's really the only thing that keeps her going. So it's very like desolate and bleak and super sad at times when she's just talking about, all these feelings of like what would happen to the animals if something happened to her type thing. So she's just existing and going through the forest and getting items to keep them together and keep them fed, and there's these storms that happen, so it's very like mundane in a way, and something happens towards the end of the book, and I won't spoil it, but it was really good, and I would definitely compare it to I Who Have Never Known No Men, but I don't know, I feel like I like them both equally, so it was really interesting to read, and glad I read that one. I read one horror book this month, which was The Immaculate Deception by Isabel Levino. This was interesting. I feel now that I think about it and I sit with this book for a little bit, I feel like I would still recommend it. This is a story that takes place back in like the 1800s somewhere. But it is Latinx, so I want to say it takes place in Spain if I'm remembering correctly. But she is a young girl who is pregnant from the very beginning of the book, right? And her family is deeply Catholic, deeply religious. So there's like themes of, Catholicism and religion that you'd probably resonate if you had any sort of, religion in your childhood, about how, they were and how they expected the men to court them, and, nothing can happen until they're married, and, all those traditional ideologies that they had back then. So she does not want her parents to find out what's happened. So her mom actually just figures out that she's pregnant while they're at church. And now she wants to go, find her husband, or not her husband, but like the boy she's been seeing, and tell him that she's pregnant, and see if they can, she can get engaged to him real quick, and then figure out how they can do this life so that her parents and, everybody can calm down. They go on this carriage ride. She starts to tell him what's going on, and then they get into this accident right before she's able to tell him, or like, I think she tells them right before they have the accident. And then next thing you know, she wakes up in this bed that's not her house, and that's when shit just gets trippy. Like, the first half of the book is very confusing. Like, you will be very confused as to what's happening, and you don't really figure out what's happening until the second half of the book and the POV changes. I was like, what is happening? Like, I'm so confused. And then I was like, okay, that's what I thought might have been happening. Interesting themes in that book. Definitely look it up, but it is horror. So I did it in a group buddy read, so had some people to talk to that about, but it is a good like book club pick, I think, because there's so many different things you can talk about. So that was a fun one to read. My Friends by Frederick Bachman. This was not my first book by him. I've read several books by him, and what an interesting story. I really liked his writing. This is about a girl who's kind of an orphan, doesn't have a family, and her best friend has passed away, so she kind of is running in the streets. And then she runs into this artist who is like in the back of an alley, and then she sees the art, and kind of they have this conversation about this art piece, and then that's pretty much it. And then he goes to the hospital and like passes away, and he tells one of the friends in the friend group that he needs to find this girl because she's basically inheriting this piece of art, because it turns out he is like a very, very famous like artist, the artist, and it's worth a lot of money, and he wants to give it to her that he just met her. Story about them two going on an adventure, kind of. So they go on an adventure and they tell each other stories. They're on a train. She doesn't want the artwork, she's just like this young kid, which she did annoy me at times, because she was just like she was just such a teenager that just drove me crazy at times. So she was very like mean, and just like, I don't, very upset about her upbringing, obviously for due reasons. And then they tell the story of like the painting and like the picture of the painting, which is what we see on the cover of the book. Like I don't remember if I cried, but it was like, I don't know if I cried, but I was sad towards the end. But I know people sometimes cry in his novels. The Obsessed by Lizzie Bueller. This was a debut novel. She is a girl that is a Harvard student, and by the title, I thought that she was going to be obsessed with her Russian professor. She's not. She has a boyfriend, and immediately from the start, like you can, it's like a 10-year difference. So he's like in his late 30s, and she's like in her early 20s. And they have this relationship, but you can tell like they're not like vibing. They break up, but in the meantime, she is very much obsessed with his ex-girlfriend named Sophia. For a myriad of different reasons, she's just obsessed with his ex-girlfriend. And then her favorite author ever happens to also be named Sophia, so she's also obsessed with that Sophia. So she's just obsessed with these two women named Sophia that are just not related in any sort of way, but that's who she's obsessed with. She talks about them all the time. She brings them up. After they break up, she goes back to her Harvard life, and she does talk about like literary things and like college life at times just like went over my head. I was like, you think that I know what you're talking about, but I don't know anything what you're talking about. Like as the reader, like I did not understand some of it, but some of the writing was a little pretentious, I gotta say. And she meets this guy like on a dating site, and when they meet, he actually dated the same Sophia as her ex. So now she's got this other connection. So now she's got to date him because they have this connection, right? And then, she's not really emotionally available. He's not really emotionally available. And she's just got this obsession that she can't talk about. At times, she seemed like she should be off the hinges and just reels herself back in really quickly. Noticed that quite a few times. She's just like, I have this obsession. Like, I have this obsession and this OCD compulsive disorder since I was a kid. So like a couple times she takes herself to therapy and like calls herself out on this behavior. So that was interesting for an obsessive, I guess, compulsive disorder in a story setting like this. She was very like down to earth, which was like, oh, okay, well, that's not that obsessive and crazy if you're calling yourself out on it. So I picked it for a debut novel. The last one that I read was E. Salvador called Please Don't Go. This is another one that was on my list of 7 books in 7 days. And I really wanted to know more about this because it has been on the top of people's lists, like a lot of people's lists for romance. So I gotta say that first chapter, if you've read it, that first chapter gripped me like no other book gripped me. Like I was in a chokehold that first chapter, where they meet on a bridge and they don't really exchange information after that. And then she has a flat tire on the side of the road, and this girl comes and says, hey, I'll call my brother. He can help, fix your tire. And the brother comes, and it happens to be the guy she met the first night, or the first, met. And then he's like, oh, you need to continue to be in my life. Like I need to keep being in your life. And like, it was so sweet. This is about grief and 2 people that are dealing with grief and mental health representation, and heart-wrenching, audibly sweet, so forward in the way that they communicate, just like healthy boundaries. Parents who are very typical, Latino parents and Hispanic parents at times. One obviously is not in the picture, and other 2 are, and they're very, very overprotective of the other. They develop this friendship and love, and you're like, oh wow, everything's going great. Like this is great for them. And then you realize it's not always going to be like roses and rainbows the entire time. And that scene also had me in a chokehold, and I was like, God, you got me good. I thought it was going to be like this, just like fantastic, and it was so unexpected in such a great way. Small breakup. They did break up, so we really enjoyed that book as well. That was another one of my favorites, and I cannot read. She has a new book coming out in August. Excited to read another title by E. Salvador. So that's it. That's a lot of books. I talked for like, it feels like an hour. So all the books that I read for the month of July, like one of these a month, and just fill you in on all the books that I've read. So thank you guys for watching.